Joining us now is retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. He's also a senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. On Friday, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin for war crimes. The court says the charges stem from the alleged abduction of children from Ukraine. Russia's Commissioner of Children's Rights was also charged, and the cases represent some of the first international charges issued for members of the Kremlin. The Kremlin says Russia does not recognize the ICC or its jurisdiction, and it's unlikely that either of the cases will make it to trial. First off, what is your reaction to the International Court's arrest warrant?
You know, I'm frankly a little bit surprised because, I mean, even the United States, China, India, and of course Russia, they're not even members of the treaty that makes up the ICC. So it's obviously going to have no, jurisdiction or authority. So it's basically a political statement, something to bring more negative light on the Russians, but it has no practical value and certainly no concern for the Russian side.
Well, as long as Putin stays in Russia, he won't be arrested, but could he be detained if he actually leaves the country? And if so, how would that process play out?
It's theoretically possible, but of course the Russians know exactly what countries are part of the ICC and which ones especially are antagonistic towards Russia. So, I mean, Putin would never fly to any of those locations, knowing that it would be a real possibility. In the event that it did happen, for some reason, they made some mistake or thought they had a safe place to land and they didn't, because we have seen this occasionally throughout the history, is that the officials of a country that does represent or reflect the ICC and is a part of that treaty, then they could not investigate, they could capture him and arrest him and then transfer him over to the ICC, and then he would stand trial there. That's how it would happen, but there's virtually no chance of that happening.
Okay. Let's look to Monday. Monday, Chinese President Xi Jinping is scheduled to visit Moscow in what's seen as a major diplomatic boost to Vladimir Putin. Xi's visit would mark his first meeting with Putin in Russia since the start of this invasion. China's foreign minister says the war in Ukraine could be a core part of their talks that day. Do you expect anything significant to come out of Xi's visit to Russia?
Yeah, it's definitely a big issue, and especially coming right on the heels of China's singular success in the diplomacy world of trying to bring together otherwise, harsh enemies of Iran and Saudi Arabia and getting them to agree to improve relationships. The Chinese side is definitely riding on a diplomatic high right now. And I think that they're putting more emphasis on the issue of this peace plan that they have put forth already, and, the basis of one, which, of course, the United States has dismissed as not realistic and dead on arrival. But I think China is a little bit more interested in perhaps moving the ball forward, and because anything they can do to bring this to an end will just catapult the Chinese side to even higher respect around the world. And that's, of course, what they're looking for. So that increases their influence. It's definitely a high road to go. There's much difficulties because he also has to get the Ukraine side to agree to it. And thus far, both Russia and the Ukraine side are both adamantly opposed to any kind of a negotiated settlement that's not of their benefit. And until China can figure out how to breach that gap, not much is going to happen with it.
Okay. Well, on Tuesday, a Russian jet crashed into a U.S. drone over the Black Sea, then forcing the U.S. to bring the drone down. Thursday, video of that incident was released by the U.S. European Command, which edited that footage for Time. It does show the Russian jet approaching the U.S. aircraft and dumping fuel near it twice before colliding with the drone. Both countries have opened a dialogue about this incident. Do you anticipate this incident escalating tensions, and to what level? And how do we avoid something like this from happening again?
Well, this really highlights the dangers and the risks that I've frankly been concerned about from the beginning of this war, throughout all of the first year and have been grateful that nothing has happened so far. But it illustrates just how easily things could spiral out of control, and whether it's by an accident or a miscalculation or just an error of some sort, it could cause a clash that could bring the United States and Russia into direct military confrontation. Now, in this particular one, we seem to have avoided that. And as you pointed out, it was a very positive sign that both the Minister of Defense and the Secretary of Defense for the United States both talked together on the phone to try to keep this contained. The problem is going to be what happens next. Does the United States stop sending these kinds of drones? Do they just move it further back? Or do they do as Lindsey Graham suggested and continue to do them right up close to the Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Sevastopol and put armed escorts with them potentially, which could literally bring us into a direct military clash with Russian aircraft, which could then spiral out of control with all kinds of nuclear ramifications. And that certainly is not in American interest and something we should avoid at all costs. But you do have sides from the Russian side, actually. Earlier today, some of their senior ranking fighter pilots have said, we should continue to do this. We should not allow the West to fly reconnaissance drones right next to our border for the purpose of helping to kill Russian soldiers, and we should push back more. So it could set up a future clash and something we need to be very careful about.
Okay. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.